Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the Full Body Yes podcast. Today, we are going to talk about how I have used energetic intuitive tools to finally, 4 years on, get over my birth trauma, unblock such huge emotions that have been just suppressed and bottled up in me for so long, which in turn have contributed to the probably biggest quantum leaps I have had in my business and honestly my life so far. So I just want to start by saying that for the longest time, I was the anti trauma informed world. Not really anti, I didn't have strong feelings about it, but because I know several people in my life who have used the word trauma and things that happened to them when they were 7 to still inform the way they operate their lives at the age of 50 and 60, I was always very careful around identifying with the word trauma, around giving trauma a big space in my life. But what I have realized over the last year, especially, is that there is a very big difference between dealing with the trauma, dealing with the emotions the trauma has brought up, expressing them, releasing them in order to move on. There's a big difference between that and between staying stuck in the trauma and staying stuck in victim mode. Now, as you know me, I always preach taking radical responsibility. I always preach not being a victim. And again, I think that is why for so long I had this resistance towards dwelling, quote unquote, in trauma. But what I've realized is taking radical responsibility also means, yes, sometimes staying in the quote unquote victim just a bit longer in order to allow for the emotions to truly be processed so that you can move on in the world. Because you listening to this, you are likely a business owner, creative, looking to really get to the next level of your business, of your career, or anything else. Honestly, this really relates to anything. I just know that most of my listeners and most of my clients are business owners, creatives, entrepreneurs. So if you have been in a place where you have been trying to make something happen for quite a long time, and you know that you have taken the aligned physical action, you know that you have been doing the energetic work, you have been putting in the energetic effort, and things feel stuck for way longer than they logically should, then that might mean that there are some emotions that are stuck within you, within your body, within your system, within your energy that you have not let go of. And they are essentially blocking you from getting to that next level and from getting the thing that you want. And today we're going to talk about how bottled up emotions from my labor, from, me giving birth to my son 4 years ago, how they have essentially been almost like a brick wall separating me from the big goals and from things that I had been working hard to achieve for so long, but kept feeling like I was hitting a wall. And a big part of it has been finally dealing with the birth trauma and finally letting the emotions go. Now, honestly, we're not going to get too deep into the actual birth story, both because it's not really that relevant. What's relevant here is kind of like the lessons and the ways that I've actually finally released the trauma. And also because once you process emotions, you really don't feel the need to talk about the traumatic events so much. So I'm not going to talk to you too much about it, except for the details that are just relevant to give you some context. But what I do want to say before I go into it is that I have gone to therapy. I have gone to therapy. And you listening to this, if you're thinking, well, I have dealt with the trauma or with certain big emotions that I've had because I've gone to therapy, but things are still stuck. Well, therapy can only help so far, especially high frequency beings. Now, in this world, any being can range between 1 to 1,000 on a frequency scale. In this third realm that we are living in, people are normally between kind of 180 to maybe 390, 400. Now, the higher the frequency of a person does not necessarily mean that they are a better person. What it means is they have had more lifetimes and more soul lessons to go through as a result. So when I'm going to discuss now, like lower frequency versus higher frequency, that does not mean that the people with quote unquote lower frequency points are not as good or not as nice or not as kind. It simply means that they are younger souls. Now, there are very different modalities in this lifetime to deal with emotions and with traumas. Most of the world, the Western world, knows of therapy, going to see psychologists, therapists, talking over things. Now, those are not bad, but what I have learned is they are only truly helpful in processing emotions for people at a kind of lower frequency range than where I am and where a lot of my clients are. And if you are listening to this and you are thinking, oh my gosh, yes, like I have been going to therapy for years, or I used to go to therapy for years, and things just have not been like truly resolved, this is likely why. You are likely just an older soul, and therefore you need higher frequency modalities in order to resolve certain emotions and certain traumas. Now, every single trauma, every single emotion, every single situation might require different modalities. And I am not saying skip therapy altogether, because it did help me to be able to talk about what I experienced. And I think part of experiencing certain emotions and traumas, and when I say trauma, it can be a big T trauma, a small T trauma, it can be something that other people would not think as that significant. And honestly, I think my birth story probably goes into that category. It wasn't a very traumatic birth from the outside, the way I experienced it was, though. So I just lost my train of thought. But essentially, what I'm saying is different situations would require different modalities at different times as well. Now, for me, it was very helpful, and I did go to therapy for like 2 years. Some of it focused on the birth, some of it focused on completely other things as well. But there comes a time when the universe signals to you, hey, you have to deal with it. You truly have to deal with it. Now, how do you know if an emotion is processed or not? If you feel the need to still talk about it, to still complain about it, or to still be excited about it, whatever it is, that means that the emotion has not been truly processed. For example, say something really exciting just happened to you. You got like a really exciting news or whatever it is, and you are very excited to go tell your closest friends and family, your partner. You go and you call your partner and you tell them, and they're very excited for you, hopefully. And then you go and call your mom, and she is very excited for you. And then you go and, I don't know, call your best friend, and they are very excited for you. And then honestly, by the third, fourth, or fifth person, you're kind of over it, right? Like you are not as excited. You do not really want to tell more people about it. That is a good sign. That means that you have processed the emotion. The emotion is not stuck within you. And then you can move on without it potentially being a block later on. And yes, even a positive emotion that hasn't been truly processed can end up not being good, because again, that's not balance. Being balanced means like seeing the good, seeing the bad, neutralizing yourself, moving on. When you process an emotion, you essentially neutralize yourself. Now, same thing goes for if something really annoying happened to you and you want to complain to someone. You will call your partner and you will tell them, and you will tell your sister, and by the third or fourth person, you're over it. You do not really feel the need to complain anymore. Like you're like, I don't really want to talk about it anymore. Again, this means that the emotion has been processed and you can move on. So, when it comes to bigger things, potentially bigger traumatic events, bigger things that just really left a mark in you, it can sometimes require you to do more than just tell a few people about it. And that is what I learned after being in like 2 years, for 2 years in therapy. Now, not with a psychologist, it's actually with a coach who is amazing. I still see her today. She's a therapist and a coach, and she works with different modalities. But we talked about my birth trauma for quite a few sessions. We did some brain rewiring around that, but things still were not resolved. And the reason I know this is that until recently, until just a few weeks ago, I was still willing to complain to anyone who would listen about how difficult my birth was, how traumatic it was. I would still see or hear about women who had easy births and I would get jealous or I would get resentful. All of these things showed me and will show you that means that the emotion had not been processed yet. If I still, 4 years after having my son, if I still hear about other women having easy births or having support or whatever it is, and I get jealous or I get resentful or I get angry or whatever it is, again, that means that I have not fully processed my experience, or I would be a lot more neutral about it. So again, if you have been stuck on something for a very long time, even though again logically it just should have been here by now, or it should be so much easier, that likely means that there are some suppressed emotions that you have not fully processed, and they are still quietly, subconsciously controlling your life and blocking everything that you are trying to create until you identify those emotions and, most importantly, process them. And for me, it has been about a year of really doing the work, and specifically, the breakthrough has happened, I would say, in the last really 3-4 weeks. The results that I have seen just from processing the emotions from my birth, I haven't gotten to the postpartum period, which has been a whole trauma in itself. So I'm very excited and curious to see what happens once I actually process those emotions in that period of my life, which was even more traumatic than my birth. But even just now, processing through my trauma from birth, my emotions that I had been bottling up for so long, the results that I have seen have been insane. I'll just give you a few of them. 2 weeks ago, I had a client who came to me for actually face to face for our second session, and he said he would pay me after the second session for both of our sessions, and he ended up paying me 2.5 times what I had asked for, saying that the value was just so insane that he could not forgive himself paying the rate that I had asked him to pay me. And he is not someone that has a lot right now, and he still said he just had to pay me more. So that is just one thing that happened. Another thing that happened is literally in the last 10 days, I have had 7 new clients come to me in 10 days. Now, for me, that is a lot. For me, that is a lot. 7 new clients, not returning clients, not clients who are coming back for their fourth, fifth, sixth session, whatever. No, new clients all have come to me through referrals, through word of mouth, through existing and past clients just passing on the message. And that is something that I had never experienced before, definitely not at this rate so fast at such a short amount of time. I also had a client sign up for a 30-day intensive with me, someone who I had never worked with one-on-one before. And intensives with me are not cheap because they include daily support. So outside of the sessions, there is daily support, accountability. And those things are things that had never happened to me at such a short period of time, and also with so much ease. Because yeah, I've had new clients come to me before. I've never had 7 in 10 days. Yes, I've had clients come to me before, but that has always been through me actively marketing, working hard, putting out content, putting out emails. This time, all the new clients came from word of mouth, me not having to do anything. The client who signed up for the intensive signed up after one email, me not having to go crazy. I wrote the email in probably 15 minutes and this client signed up. And I'm probably missing, I feel like there's like 1 or 2 other things that have happened that are related to like financial that I can't really remember now. But honestly, I had never seen anything like this. And I looked it intuitively. I mean, I already knew this, but I just had to check intuitively before I make a whole podcast about it, a whole podcast episode about it. And yes, this is all a result of me finally dealing with what the labor brought with it 4 years ago. So let's quickly get into it. As I said, I'm not going to tell you the whole story. I have processed through it. I now can't really remember, or don't even understand why I found it so traumatic until like a couple weeks ago. But I will just shortly just give you the context. So it is now June, the end of June 2026. I had my son on the 17th of June 2022. So just over 4 years ago. The birth itself it wasn't extremely difficult. It was long. So I woke up on I was 37 weeks. It was my first pregnancy. I woke up on Thursday at 5 a.m. with contractions. I didn't know they were contractions, bear in mind, because I was only 37 weeks. So I thought they were just Braxton Hicks. Jokes on me, because I arrived at hospital 5 hours later when they were like 40 seconds apart. And the midwife was like, "You're 5 centimeters dilated." I was sure they, when I went to hospital, just to be sure, I was positive they would send me back home and tell me it was just Braxton Hicks. So 5 a.m. contraction started, had my son Alex 3:35 a.m. the next day. So like 22 and a half hour labor, I would say. Which is quite long, but like nothing crazy. I tried to go natural, which honestly I didn't really want to at the time. I was not in this world. I was not in the spiritual world. I was not in the natural health world. I actually got into natural health, naturopathic nutrition after I had my son, and I had the most horrible postpartum recovery, if you could even call it recovery, because it did not feel like recovery. But at the time, I was just like, drug me up. I just don't want to feel any pain. Honestly, if I had another child, after experiencing that pain for so long, I don't know, I might go for epidural again. But here in the UK, they're very kind of anti drugs, and like they really try to encourage you to go natural. So I arrived in the hospital at 37 weeks, truly thinking I had like 2.5 to 3 weeks left until I had my son, and didn't have a birth plan. I was meant to have an appointment with my midwife at 38 weeks to plan my birth. And of course, that didn't happen. Didn't have a plan at all. I was still working until 5 p.m. The night before I woke up with contractions. And the midwives told me when I got there, once they checked me and they saw that I was 5 centimeters dilated, they told me, "Oh, it's if you've already survived the contractions so far, they're not going to get much worse. So come to the birthing suite and try giving birth naturally." Because I don't know if it's like this in the whole of the UK, but in the hospital that I was in, you can either go to the birthing suite, which is beautiful, and you have a pool there and like fairy lights, and like it just looks really, really nice. And that is for giving birth naturally. That is just you and the midwives. I don't think there are any doctors involved, to be honest. Or if you want to go medicated, you need to go to a completely different ward in a completely different section of the hospital. Terrible, like ugly looking room. They basically punish you for going medicated. And I believe the midwives, and I went to the birthing suite, went up to 8 centimeters dilated without any intervention, any medical intervention. And to be honest, like while it was very painful, and anyone who listens to it who has given birth before will know what I'm talking about, I felt like it was awful, but I felt like I could potentially handle it, but I was just scared. I was scared that it would just get to a point where it would be too much and then it would be too late to get the epidural. So, fun fact, my midwife actually had to lie to the doctor and tell him I was only like 6 or 7 centimeters dilated so that I could get the epidural, because normally they don't even give it at 8 centimeters. So I got the epidural at 8 centimeters. They had to move me first to the ward. So yeah, like moved me to the ugly part of the hospital. And then my birth stalled for 12 hours. Then when it came time to push, I started pushing at 1 and I gave birth at 3:35. So that was over 2.5 hours of pushing because there was something in the way. I don't even, honestly, I don't even remember. And it's kind of gross, so I'm just not going to give you too many details. But basically, they had to like manually move things around, and then they also had to do an episiotomy, and Alex ended up coming out. So listen, not the smoothest birth, but oh, and also I forgot to mention, they actually took the epidural out before the pushing stage. So I actually did feel everything while I was pushing for 2.5 hours. So that was not fun. But, as you can hear, it's not unheard of, right? Like it's not the craziest birth story. They didn't have to use any like instruments or anything like that. But if we rewind, like, I kind of want to do this rewinding movement. When I was pregnant, when I was around 5 months pregnant, we started renovating our house. So we had bought a house in the UK about, I think, 1.5 or 2 years prior. That was in a terrible condition, honestly. A really, really old house. It was built in the 1950s. I don't think any work had been done to it since, honestly. And we had the plan of buying it and renovating it. And I ended up getting pregnant. And when I was around 5 months pregnant, we moved out of the house. My grandfather, who was alive back then and was the closest person to me in the world, I'm sure if you are an avid listener of this podcast, you have heard me talk about him before. He was alive back then. He was a pensioner, and his passion was, so he lived in Israel, and his passion was buying like old flats, old houses, doing them up and renting them out. He just loved doing it, and he wanted to help me do it here. So he actually came to London and with my grandma, and they stayed here for a few months. Now, my grandfather, so again, as with everything, there are good things and bad things to everything. My grandfather, it was incredible the fact that he was here and he was able to advise us on what to do with his experience. He actually oversaw the renovations. He was telling the builders what to do and everything else. So he was very, very helpful in that regard. And I'm so grateful that we had him, because otherwise we would have had to pay a project manager and it would have been a lot more money. And like, obviously my grandfather always had my highest interests in his heart, as opposed to a project manager who would mainly just want to get things done fast, or just like try and get more money, whatever. So really grateful for that. The thing that was, the bad side of the situation was that my grandfather really liked taking his time and really liked doing things his way. So when we moved out of the house, my grandfather was like, "You're not doing such a massive renovation," because we were only renovating the downstairs. Well, that was a plan. He was like, "You'll probably be back here within like a week or two." So we moved in with my cousin who lives in London for the first week. And then we saw that things were not moving nearly as fast. Like there was no way we were able to move back to the house that fast. So we ended up going and renting or getting a hotel room with my grandparents. So two hotel rooms in my neighborhood. And we lived there, if I'm taking you all the way to the future, ended up living there until Alex was 6 weeks old. So as you are realizing from this, the house wasn't even ready to live in, even when Alex was born. And even when we moved back to the house when Alex was 6 weeks old, we still didn't have a front wall to the house because we did a front extension. So we like knocked down the wall of the front, but we had problems with the council, whatever. So we literally had to have we just covered it with some plaster boards until we were able to proceed with the front extension. Thank God it was summer. Otherwise it would have been freezing in the house. But if, you can imagine if you have been pregnant, or even if you have not, you can imagine that a woman, especially when she gets to like 8, 9 months pregnant, she wants to be at home. She wants to be at home. She wants to nest. That's a very natural hormonal thing. She wants to feel like she's very settled, right? Like once she has her baby, she can come back home and she has a place to be. Everything is organized and, set for her and for the baby. I did not have that experience. Not only did I not have that experience, I spent the last probably 1 or 2 months of my pregnancy freaking out over the fact that the renovations were taking much longer than we had expected and things were just not moving. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, this baby's gonna come. Am I gonna be in a tiny hotel room with a baby? Like, what am I doing with my life? That was really traumatic. Adding to all of this is the fact that my husband and my grandparents weren't really getting along, and we were kind of like living together in a hotel. So that didn't add to my stress, but I'm not going to get into that. The point is, as someone who was pregnant for the first time, usually women, when they're pregnant in the first, with the first pregnancy, they go full term. So they will go to like 40 weeks, sometimes even 41 weeks. And let me tell you, I was relying on that. I was relying on getting to 40 to 41 weeks. So, to give the house a chance of being ready for me and the baby. But I woke up on that random Thursday morning. I was only 37 weeks pregnant with those contractions that ended up being real contractions. I thought they were fake, but they were real. And that led to a whole spiral where throughout my birth, throughout labor, even though, yes, there were things that also didn't go smoothly, there was the pain, there were the contractions, there was the pushing for 2.5 hours, everything that was going through my mind all the time is, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why are these things happening? Why is this baby coming early? How did I find myself in a, ward now giving birth where I'm only supposed to give birth in 3 weeks? What's going on? I even remember that while I was pushing, and literally right before Alex came out, the midwife was like, think about the baby. You're just going to see the baby in a second. And I remember thinking and being so ashamed of myself at that time. I remember thinking to myself, this is like the last thing that's motivating me, because I do not want to see this baby right now. I just did not want to see him. I was feeling really disconnected from the situation. I was angry at the fact that I was 37 weeks and giving birth when I don't have a house to return to. I didn't even have a cot or anything because I didn't have anywhere to put it in because we were staying in a tiny hotel room. And basically, the whole time I was just thinking to myself, what's going on? Like, just completely disconnected, did not want to see the baby for another 3 weeks, had no excitement when he came out. I remember even like when he was born and they put him on me for a few minutes and then whatever, they cleaned him, clothed him, and put him next to me in the cot. I didn't even look at him once. Like, I was so disconnected from the situation. And again, I know this might sound like this doesn't sound like such a traumatic thing. Well, for me, it was. And for every single person, there are, the big T traumas. And for me, well, it started during pregnancy, it continued in birth, and it became really, really bad during postpartum. But the fact that he came 3 weeks early without me having any plan, without me preparing for it, with things not going my way during labor, there was even a point where like I was there with my grandma and my husband and they were both sleeping, and people pleaser me at the time, the midwife was just about to go on a holiday to Spain and she really just wanted to talk about her upcoming holiday. Now me, a woman who has been in active labor for like 20 hours at that point, who really could have used some sleep after she got her epidural, I was there nodding and smiling and asking the midwife questions about her upcoming trip while my grandma and Zev is my husband, when my grandma and Zev were just sleeping on the side on the couches instead of like letting me sleep and them perhaps like entertaining the midwife. So again, there are a lot of lessons to learn from it. And at the time, I was already manifesting. I was already very deep into manifestation. I was not deep at all into the other aspects of the spiritual world except for law of attraction, right? Like, I did not know about the law of reflections. I didn't know about like emotional mastery or anything like that. That definitely ended up leading to me learning about all of these things, and that is why I'm grateful in retrospect. At the time though, that was not fun. So going back to, I don't know if I want to say present day, but over the last 4 years, I was just carrying emotions from this labor and again, also from postpartum, but I have not fully processed postpartum yet. So I'm not making the episode about that. There will be an episode about that once I feel like I've fully processed it. But I have been carrying emotions that, came with that. I think the main emotion was anger at almost at the universe for like, why did this baby come so early? I didn't ask for him to come early. I had nowhere to go. I literally ended up having to go back to the hotel with like no cot even for the baby and like having to do all myself. Like, I had no support, which again, that kind of bleeds into the postpartum experience. But a lot of anger over the fact that he was born early. Now, I know it's only 3 weeks early, but for me at that point, 3 weeks would have made a huge difference, both in terms of how ready I would have been and also how ready the house would have been for us to move back into. And trust me, it is not fun as a new mom with a newborn to live in a tiny hotel room without a kitchen, without space to walk around, it was also very dark, so without much light. Like, that was traumatic in itself. But yeah, I have been walking around with these emotions, and as I said, even though I had gone to therapy and talked about all of these things, I still found myself, first of all, hearing about someone giving birth and immediately thinking that I feel so sorry for her. Like, though that was my initial emotion. No, like, whether it was like a celebrity or like someone that I knew in person or whatever, my like initial reaction was not congratulations. No, my initial reaction was like, poor thing, I feel so sorry for her. Her life is now ruined. That has been my reaction, literally, until a few months ago, probably. And then another thing, which is what I talked about before, and that has been going on until very recently. Like, my husband's sister-in-law gave birth about a month ago, and hearing how her birth went still triggered me. So hearing about births that went more smoothly, or that they got the epidural and got to sleep before the pushing stage, all of these things would really trigger me and make me angry over why did I have it so hard, quote unquote. And over the last year, I have really gotten the intuitive nudges to finally truly deal with the emotions, truly deal with what has been coming up. And it has taken, honestly, until the last few weeks to fully hone in on the exact modalities and truly just let everything go to the point that I am just not triggered by these things anymore. I feel like I have truly processed everything that I went through. And as a result, as I said, I've had these massive quantum leaps in my business because I have allowed myself to finally receive and let go. And we'll talk about receiving in a second. But yes, intuition has been nudging me to truly deal with it. And it started, I would say, around a year ago. So maybe like 11 months ago. I think after I finally finished my PhD and I was starting to come out of this survival mode that I was in for 3 years, because for the first 3 years of Alex's life, I was a full time PhD student. For the first year, I was also teaching still in academia. When he was 4 months old, I started my first business, which was online health coaching, and then I turned into fitness coaching as well. And then I transitioned into this business alongside doing different jobs on the side. So, and of course, alongside raising a baby and then a toddler, and doing it all with very minimal support and without having family around. So I was very much in survival mode for a few years until I had my PhD Viva in the US, they call it defense, in July of 2025, and passed it, became a PhD. And finally, my life became just a little bit clearer. So there was a bit more space. And it took months. It wasn't immediately because I was not used to having this space. So I was trying to fill it with different things until I just really had to look into the reflections, look into what was happening in my life, and truly understand what the universe was sending my way and what I was being asked, or what really I was manifesting to happen to me, so that I could finally heal and get to the next level. Because as I said, and I've talked about it before on the podcast, I had my previous business until I shut it down about a year and 2 months ago, year and 3 months ago, which was the health and fitness coaching business, where I was working 12-hour days, had a lot of clients, and still was barely making any money because I was getting like the lowest quality clients, gave everyone discounts, was giving the highest quality service for literally like what I used to charge clients for a month of one-on-one coaching, where they had access to me literally every single day. Now I charge more than that for 1 hour of coaching. And as a result, I'm getting much higher quality clients who are also getting much better results because they're actually taking responsibility for their lives. But that business was constantly me hitting a wall. Then I finally shut it down, started this business, which is my soulful business, which is truly what I am meant to do, destined to do, and being pulled to do by my soul. And this business, I will say, has been successful much faster. Like literally 2 weeks after I changed my business, I launched a group program, which, like, when I think about it again, going back, like, that was very bold of me. And I had quite a few signups, and I was shocked because until 2 weeks before, I was still talking about health and fitness. And suddenly I had signups for a group program that was about manifestation. So that was already a sign that I was already in the right place. Things were happening much more easily. Clients were coming in for intuitive reads, clients were coming in for sessions, but everything was pretty slow. Like, and again, that's understandable when you're just starting a new business, but still, especially like until a month ago, I still felt, and I talked about it in a previous podcast episode, I think in the last one, I still felt like things were just not happening as fast as they should. Part of it was ego desire. Like, listen, wanting like thousands of listeners to my podcast every week is probably still not going to happen, at least not right now. I still have to go through a few things on the way. But when it comes to one-on-one clients, with my coaching skills, with my intuitive healing skills, I knew that it shouldn't be as difficult to get clients, because I would sometimes have to wait a month for a new client to come in, 2 months for a new client to come in. And every time it would feel like really grinding and just like an uphill battle, like having to do so much for relatively so little, while I'm seeing like other healers around who have a lot less energy, a lot less experience, doing things much faster. So there was something there that I was like, okay, there's something keeping me blocked. And I had been getting the nudge more and more to deal with my birth trauma. And I saw how that was blocking me in so many areas of life, not just my career, also my relationship with my husband, me still like begrudging him over certain things, my relationship with my physical body. So a lot of different things that just, I knew it was time to deal with it. Why did it take nearly 4 years until I fully processed it? Well, there was the part that I was in survival mode for 3 years. And sometimes when you just have so much on your plate, you literally just cannot. You just cannot deal with it. And I just had to finish my PhD. I knew I had to finish it. I knew I had to put it behind me. So that's part of it. And another part is I truly believe I had to be in a certain spiritual place to truly trust the tools that I have used and truly just utilize them to the best of my ability and to be able to truly help me. So let's get into the main three tools that have helped me. I will say they have all been informed, you will not be surprised, by my trained intuition. So I have trained my intuition with top mentors in the world, and it has really gotten to a point where I can pinpoint very easily what I need to do. I can hear messages from the universe very easily. I can decode reflections very easily. I can understand what suppressed emotions I have very easily. I can look into the modalities that are best for me to use at any given moment, because as I said, different modalities will be good for different people and for different situations. And again, I think it was good for me to go to therapy for a while just to like have that recognition and be able to talk about the emotion, because sometimes if you just go to like release it immediately, you're like missing out on truly being just understood and truly being just validated. And as humans, we sometimes need it. But yeah, I have gotten to a point where I just knew I had to use my tools. So I actually wrote them down on my phone. So I'm going to just have a look here to just go over the first one because I wrote them in order. Okay. So as I said, they have all been led by intuition. So intuition has been the pinnacle of it all, but I will also say intuition as one of the tools. And the first tool, particularly with decoding reflections. Now, if you're hearing me talking about reflections and you don't know what I'm talking about, go back. You have a lot to catch up with. There are quite a few episodes about reflections, so definitely go back and make sure that you listen to those. But I have had two types of recurring reflections in the last year, and specifically getting worse and worse in the last few months. One of them has been my throat. So funnily enough, as a child, I used to suffer with my throat a lot. I used to have strep throat literally every few weeks, every month, to the point that I was just like, antibiotics and me were like best friends when I was in primary school, and then didn't have throat issues for ages. And I remember like a week before my Viva last year, I had the worst throat infection. I was actually in Budapest at the time, in Hungary, visiting family because I have family living there. And I ended up just lying in bed for like 4 days straight, lost my voice, everything. And this past year, I've just had like constant throat issues. The worst was about 3 months ago when I ended up just having to go to hospital because I had waited too long and it had become a really bad bacterial infection. So strep throat, a bacterial strep throat. And I had to get antibiotics, which again, at this point, I was not happy because I was much further into my natural healing, natural health journey. And I know how bad antibiotics can be for you, but because I didn't catch the reflection early enough, that reflection started with very slight throat pain about a week before. And that's the thing with reflections. They will start small, but if you don't pay attention to them, they'll become bigger and bigger. And I was too lazy, honestly, to look into the reflection. I did not think it would develop to what it ended up, developing into. So I ignored the reflection and it ended up turning into the most aggressive strep throat. Like I did not remember it can knock you out this way. Well, that was my first time having it in my adult life, but it was really, really bad. Like I literally felt like I was dying. And I'm not the type of person who gets ill very often. Yeah, I want to say this. Like when I had my first throat issue in July last year in Budapest, I was shocked because I hadn't been sick in years. Again, part of me having been in survival mode for years. But let's get into what the throat reflects us. So throat has two main possible reflections. It could change. It could be something else based on who you are and what you're experiencing. But generally, it would be either unexpressed creativity or unexpressed anger. Now, a few weeks ago, started getting throat pain again, and I was like, not again. I am catching this reflection now. And I actually checked intuitively, and I saw that if I do not deal with it, it'll actually develop into another strep throat, which is not surprising because last time I did not actually deal with the reflection. I just took the antibiotics. So if you just put a plaster, a band-aid on, but you don't actually deal with the reflection, it'll either come back in the same way or worse. So I was like, okay, I'm dealing with the emotion. I remember lying down in bed in the middle of the day, which is very unlike me. Usually I would be very productive during a work day when Alex is at nursery, looked into the reflection, saw that it was specifically for me unexpressed anger. I checked from where. It was unsurprisingly from my birth. And I checked in what area of life it started. It was anger in the family area of life, specifically towards my mom. Now, my mom does not know this, but she also does not listen to my English podcast, so we are good. So I realized I'd had a lot of bottled up anger towards my mom for not being there with me during labor, even though she could have made the effort to come from Israel and be there, and toward like being with me for like 3 or 4 days after Alex was born, and then going back to Israel and leaving me by myself. So I had a lot of bottled up anger towards my mom. And that was what that throat reflection that was starting a few weeks ago coming to tell me. And I checked with my intuition how I should process that emotion. So, for example, I checked whether I should, and you can also check the like percentage wise, and that's what I do. I check percentage wise how helpful it would be. So I checked things like, should I tell her that I'm angry with her? That tested pretty low. Tested different things, and eventually like journaling about it, tested kind of like 50%, so like not very low, not very high. What came up for me was two things that tested very high. So one of them was literally just pretending that my mom was in front of me and me just expressing my anger towards her. So in the quantum realm, there is no space and no time. And while I didn't want to hurt my relationship with my mom, I could almost express my anger towards an emotional representation of my mom, an energetic representation of her. So I did that, and that really helped. I think it was just half an hour that if you saw me from the outside, you would have thought I was literally crazy, because I was just laying in my bed talking, quote unquote, to my mom who wasn't there, and just expressing all of my anger towards her. And I also did some quantum energy healing specifically on the throat and the anger, which we'll talk about quantum energy healing as the third modality that has really helped me. But as you can see, it's all coming together. Another thing that I got to deal with that anger was to do somatic healing, which is the second tool we're going to talk about, but we're still talking about intuition and reflection. So one reflection in the last year was the throat, which was pointing me to dealing with unexpressed anger towards various people in my life because of my birth and postpartum experience. And another recurring reflection that has not been leaving me alone this past year is bruises, cuts, and burns on the left side of my body. Now, bruises have one reflection, burns have another. So every single scratches, whatever it is, every single manifestation of like a harm to your physical body has its slightly different emotional root cause. I will not get into it, into each one, but what I will say to you is the left side of the body is around receiving. It's around feminine energy and around receiving. And I have been getting all of these reflections around me, not allowing myself to receive enough. And that actually started very soon after birth, before I even knew about reflections. I actually had inflammation in my stitches. Well, not again, hopefully this is not TMI, but I had inflammation in my stitches a few times. I had to be on antibiotics a few times after, on a few courses of antibiotics after giving birth. And I actually still, like, until a few weeks ago, was still experiencing pain and that scar, by the way, is on I didn't mention, in the left side of my body, where the stitches were on the left side of my body. I was still experiencing pain over there, meaning the scar tissue didn't heal properly and I was still experiencing pain. So that reflection on the left side of my body started very early after I gave birth, and in the last few months it has been coming in everywhere. Now, if you're watching this, whether you're watching this on YouTube or even on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, I think there's like the video you can see, but if not, you can just hear. You can see I have a scar here from a burn about a month ago, a scar here from a burn about 3 months ago. I just got my nails done today, but actually about 2 weeks ago, this middle nail, so middle finger nail, broke, and it was like so painful. And honestly, just all over the left side of my body. So many body reflections. So when body reflections come in, that is after the universe has been trying to get your attention through less painful things and you have not been paying attention. So if the universe really wants you to pay attention to an inner imbalance that you need to shift towards emotions that you have bottled up and you are trying to shift, the universe will eventually make it so obvious that you cannot ignore it. And one way to make it very obvious that you cannot ignore it is having pain in your physical body, because that is something that you cannot ignore. So that is something that I am learning to do, and I have been doing a lot more of in the last few months, specifically the last even months, I would say, is learning to receive more, allowing myself to receive more. One of the reasons for why I had such a traumatic, for me, birth experience and definitely postpartum experience was that I did not ask for help from anyone. You know, during my labor, I felt so bad for my grandma and my husband that they had been awake for so many hours that I let them sleep while I was entertaining the midwife, you know? Like was not even able to come and ask them for help or ask them to maybe talk to her so I could sleep, or maybe just like, you know, be there on my side and advocate for me and say maybe Shira needs to sleep because she needs to gather some energy before the final, you know, pushing stage. So that has been something that has been recurring over the last few years, both not being able to, just not allowing myself to receive help and thinking that I have to do everything myself. And also, and that kind of connects, not allowing myself to truly receive from the universe, gripping so hard, thinking that everything was just on me. And when you grip so hard onto something, you are not leaving enough room, enough flexibility for things to actually come in smoothly. So, except for the, it's funny because I'm just remembering there was 40 days last year when I was doing God's Favorite, which is my program. And that is when I was really shifting into the frequency of receiving. And that is when, honestly, incredible things happened to me. And now, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking maybe it's worth it opening it for round 2. So stay tuned. But except for those 40 days when I really shifted into the frequency of receiving and being God's favorite, except for that, I have just been in this place of constantly gripping, constantly thinking I have to make everything happen, can't rely on anyone else, can't truly receive. And as a result, the universe reflected that to me with every single client who came in coming after me doing so much hard work, working so hard, never having a few clients come at once, rarely having referrals, like all of these things, just getting clients felt like an uphill battle, even though I was so amazing. I still am so amazing at what I do, even though every single client who's had a session with me leaves saying this is the best thing that they've ever had, more than 10 years of therapy, more than 10 years of NLP and mindset work and whatever. But still, things were happening slowly, and that was really frustrating me. And all of those reflections on the left side of my body have come in to ask me to receive. And what I've been doing in the last few months, and honestly, specifically the last month, is slowing down a little bit. And yes, doing what I need to do, but also shifting my mindset. And I've done this again through neuroscience statement and tools, through energy work and through somatic work. And we'll talk about the somatic work and energy work in a second. But I have finally allowed myself to just let go of that grip just enough to allow for things to come in. And actually, I think in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I have not had any reflections on the left side of my body. So that is showing me, because beforehand I was literally getting them regularly, that is showing me that I am more balanced with receiving. And again, I'm seeing this in my outer world. Like my business has literally doubled itself in the last 10 days alone. So that is showing you the power of using intuition to decode reflections and to understand how to shift those reflections. Now, intuition also very much helps me with the second modality that we're talking about today out of 3, and that is quantum energy healing. This is something that I have not talked about on the podcast so much, and to be honest, that is because I learned it a few years ago and I kind of just like put it aside, didn't think it meant anything, didn't really practice it, and I've really gotten back into it in the last few months. And again, everything happens in, at the right time. And ever since I started using quantum energy healing more and more on myself and clients, the results that I have been seeing have been insane. And the reason for that is quantum energy healing. What it does is it's able to detect suppressed emotions very, very easily and quickly. It is able to detect, and that is, I do through using my intuition. So, using my intuition, I detect which unexpressed emotions are there, when they started, in what area of life they started. And I am able to, using quantum energy healing, clear those emotions all the way from when they started, creating this loop that clears them because there's no time or space in the quantum field, clearing those emotions all the way from whatever, age 4 when they started in the social area of life, all the way to age 32 today. I'm just giving an example. I'm not 32. It's not an example about me. But just being able to really just clear that loop. And then also, so sending a frequency to allow to clear the loop, clear the emotion, and also sending the right frequency to heal certain things. So that would be healing both the physical things. So when I had the throat issues, I also literally sent a frequency that helps heal the throat, but then also sending frequencies with certain beliefs and certain emotions that would be helpful for me. And again, using intuition. So for me, that was at the time with the throat, unconditional love. So sending me the frequency of unconditional love. 10 days ago, when I don't even remember what I was doing quantum energy healing on, but from the next day, that is when all those crazy series of events started happening in my business. I was actually sending myself the frequency of divine confidence. And using these frequencies, I use them. It's a whole, again, just quantum energy healing is its own modality. It's very, very big, but I use frequencies, different frequencies of beliefs, emotions, clearing emotions, sacred geometry, colors. There is a whole big, I'm trying to find the right word, like it's a whole big thing. It's a huge modality. Does it work amazingly 100% by itself? No, because there is the part where you have to take radical responsibility, and part of it is really just shifting the reflection on the inside and taking the right actions to shift the reflection as well. But quantum energy healing, what I found that it does is it gives you the courage to do what you find otherwise not easy to do. It clears the negative emotions just enough to allow you to then deal with whatever is left of them and not avoid them. It allows you to, it essentially just removes the blocks, or makes the blocks small enough for you to finally be able to deal with them. So it kind of clears the fog, or like it peels the first few layers that are the most difficult to peel. And then the other work that is built on top of that, which is dealing with the reflections, which is shifting your beliefs, which is, actively, which is taking the physical action and all of those things, that just makes it so much easier. So if you have been stuck on things, I definitely recommend trying quantum energy healing. It has truly shifted so many things for me. It has, once I started getting quantum energy healing, doing quantum energy healing on certain aspects of my life, suddenly I had ideas that I'd never had before, to pitch myself to people that I never thought of pitching myself to before, to, do certain marketing ideas or content ideas that had never even occurred to me before, that got me clients or got me followers or got me people interested. So energy healing is really there to remove those first few really, really difficult, challenging blocks to remove by yourself. And if you are interested in quantum energy healing, so this is something that I do inside long-term coaching. When I see the need for it, I will do it during a session with a client. However, this can also be done as a standalone healing. So I have started doing also sessions which are just quantum energy healing plus decoding reflection. So they do not include coaching per se, but they do include the healing aspect of it, and that is done remotely with a follow-up call. So I do it on my own time. I write down everything, and then I have a call with the client to explain to them what came up, and also explain to them the reflection and what they need to do to shift it. So it is not on my website yet, but if you are interested, definitely contact me. It's also at a more affordable price point than the coaching, because coaching includes a whole other layer of truly me being there for you throughout and making sure you're taking the right actions, talking you through things, shifting your perceptions in real time. So it is different. Coaching obviously is also live, one-on-one. So I can teach you a bunch of different tools. So it's a whole other thing. But definitely, even if you just want to start, if you want to unblock yourself to begin with, quantum energy healing has been incredible for me. And then the third modality that I want to talk to you about today is somatic healing. And again, that is something my intuition has led me to, because there's this saying, the body keeps the score. right? So things that happen to us, we can process them mentally. We can talk about them all day long. We can even process them energetically, but they still, especially hard, big, challenging emotions, they get trapped in the body. And the body, if the body hasn't processed through them, they will get stuck in the body and they will literally just not allow the energy, they will not allow the energy to move and to flow properly because there are literally certain areas of your energetic body where they are blocked because of emotions that are stuck there. And what somatic healing does is it helps you work through those emotions. Now, this will kind of like depend on the person of what you need to work through and also how you need to work through it. So I have worked with my incredible friend Diana, who is a somatic healing coach. Now I am actually also a somatic healing coach myself, but this is the kind of work that you really need someone to be there for you, guide you through it, and hold space for you. And the holding space is very, very good. So we have done a few sessions about processing my birth, allowing myself to feel sorry for myself for what happened to me, allowing myself to express the anger that has been bottled up in me for so long, and finally just letting all of it go, expressing it and letting it go, using the body, using breath work, using somatic tools. And that has been an incredible piece of the puzzle that has really, really helped me just shift the trauma and shift the emotions and get to a place where I just allow myself to receive so much. So somatic healing has also been incredible in helping me doing this. So those have been the three things. So again, all led by intuition. Intuition has been telling me where to go and what to do. First one was using my intuition to decode and shift reflections. Second one was using quantum energy healing. And third one was receiving somatic healing. And all of these together over the span of a few months, but specifically the last month where I've really honed in, have changed the way I relate to my birth and have also changed the way I show up in my business and the way results show up in my business. As I said, my business has doubled in 10 days. That is insane. And things keep coming up also because my current clients and new clients I've had sessions with, I've done healings for, are referring more and more people. And suddenly my calendar is full every single day with healings and sessions, which is something that I have never had to this extent before. So if you feel like you are stuck, like you have been trying something for a very long time and things are still not moving as quickly as they should, this is probably your sign to work through emotions that are just blocking you without you even realizing this. And the three modalities that I mentioned here today are very high frequency modalities for people who are older souls, and traditional therapy just might not be enough to truly get them to process through it because traditional therapy is again on a lower frequency, so it's a match to lower frequency people. Higher frequency modalities like the ones I mentioned today will resonate more with higher frequency souls. So if this resonated with you, first of all, let me know in the comments or DM me or email me. I would really, really love to hear. By the way, I started the Hebrew podcast in the last month and a half. And so, because I'm originally from Israel, and I have to say, I have been getting so many comments from people that I don't even know on the podcast. And I'm like, is it? Obviously it's all a reflection, right? Like we manifest everything. But I was like, it would be nice to hear from all of the people that listen to the podcast because I do not get as many comments on my English podcast, even though it has more listeners and it's much older. It's been around for a year and a half. So if you've gotten something from it, I would truly, truly love to hear it. Leave a comment on YouTube and Spotify, DM me, email me. I would truly love to hear. If you feel like you need help with any of the things that I have mentioned today, whether that is a full-on intuitive healing session slash coaching session, whether that is remote energy healing, intuitive healing session, whether that is somatic therapy, whether that is just talking through things, checking for you what you need to do, what is stuck there and what is asking to be released, feel free to contact me on Instagram or by email and I can help you, refer you. We can even have a free of charge orientation call to see what would be good for you. So all of the links are down below in the description. And what's next for me? Let's just get into that for a second. Next for me is dealing with the postpartum trauma, which will likely take longer because I feel like I was in survival mode for 2 to 3 years after giving birth, and a big part of it was still being in kind of like slight depression. So originally I had very bad postpartum depression, and I didn't work through it enough. Again, I was in therapy, but it didn't help enough. So that is something that I'm working on now and working through now. It will probably take longer because, again, my postpartum journey was longer than my birth was. But I'm very excited to see what's going to come up, what's going to finally be released, because I definitely have not processed through that yet. Like, I still get very jealous, very frustrated, very angry when I see other women getting support when they have babies versus what I had. So again, that is my sign that I still have to work through it. But I'm very excited to see what my life is going to look like without having to carry that burden of those emotions that I have not allowed myself to feel and express and process until now. And also, as a result, how my life is going to upgrade, how my business is going to upgrade, how my me being a mother is going to upgrade, how me being as a wife, a friend, all of these things, how all of these things are going to upgrade. I'm really excited about that. So I will keep you posted. I will definitely do another episode once I feel like that has truly been processed as well. I will keep you posted. Thank you so much for being here with me for over an hour. I, again, would love to hear what you thought. I would love to hear if you are in kind of the same place and whether you need help. And I will see you again in the next episode. And also, I will just mention, if you're watching this on YouTube, I would be grateful if you subscribe and like. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, again, follow, leave a review, hopefully 5 stars. All of these things really help the podcast just get out there, get to more ears, and truly just, help this wisdom and the lesson that I've learned helps me share them with more people who truly need this stuff. So now I'm truly going to finish. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you again next time. Bye.